Well, a very good morning to everyone who is watching, and welcome to our second COVID-19 Mastermind panel brought to you by the Fitness Business Podcast. Now, over the next 60 minutes, our expert panel of guests will be sharing actions that fitness business owners and operators should be working on post-COVID-19. Each of our guests will focus on a very specific area of their expertise. So let me start off by introducing each of our panelists here today. First of all, I've got Stewart Campbell, the founder and CEO of Fit Summit, and his focus will be on business. We've got Mike Arce, the CEO and founder of Loud Rumour. His focus will be on marketing. Hagan, the CEO of CanFitPro, with a focus on people. John Nasta, the Director of Retention Solutions, focusing on member experience and retention. And last but not least, Justin Tamsett, the Managing Director of Active Management and the owner of the Fitness Business Podcast, focusing on leadership. So a big warm welcome to you all, and thank you so much for joining us on the panel today. Now, as we record today's broadcast, we are in the first week of May. Specifically, it's the 5th of May, and we're going to go to air with this broadcast in just a few days' time. The fact of the matter is that things are changing so rapidly right across the world in every single market. So to start off the conversation today, we're going to take a quick look around the globe, and I'm going to ask each of our panelists just to give us an insight into what the current landscape looks like in their territory. So Ross, let's start this one with you, and then I'll go to Mo after that. Over to you, Ross.
Thanks, Chantal. A very good day to everybody. Here in Asia, there's a mixed bag in terms of current situation with COVID. There's some encouraging situations and there's some maybe unknowns. Let's look at the positives first. China actually is well on the way to recovery, especially in some of its other cities outside of Beijing. Beijing is still in lockdown, but hopefully coming out soon. Shanghai gyms and clubs are now opening, and the larger ones are up to 70% capacity. Vietnam has recently opened following its lockdown and has had some decent success in making sure that the business is back up and running. And of course, Taiwan, which never really went through the lockdown phase, is still moving forward with restricted capacities. Other parts of Asia, Hong Kong is hoping to lift its restrictions as early as this week. When it comes to maybe more of Southeast Asia, Singapore, Thailand, and Malaysia are still in lockdown, and there's various degrees at which the clubs are due to open. Hopefully, at which point on the 1st of June, we will see some opening. Perhaps the little bit longer out there are Indonesia and the Philippines. And it looks like both of those countries are actually going to be in lockdown well beyond June, and perhaps the gym's not opening up until July.
Thank you so much for that, Ross. Mo, over to you.
Thank you, Chantal, and good to be with you all. So I reside in Canada, and it's been a very interesting 50 days, not counting. All of the clubs in Canada, boutiques, any fitness facility of any level and sort, closed their doors during the week of March the 16th. And will remain closed until the government directs what phase fitness clubs will be brought into the reopening plan. As it looks right now, although within our 10 provinces, there are provincial level plans that seem to vary province to province, similar to the States in the US, although we're much more conservative. And that is, there's some advocacy in Quebec, for example, that the fitness facilities will be able to open sometime in the next 4 to 6 weeks, whereas the rest of the country, it's looking like July as the very likelihood, if at all, that clubs will be able to start. And when they do open, they're using best practices from around the world. We've been very fortunate to be involved in a lot of the various global federation meetings to really take direction from Asia and other parts of the world. So it'll be a very phased reopening process as well. And it'll be likely 3 months once we do reopen before we see any sort of normalcy within the clubs. And the big thing that's going on in Canada is that how governments are seeing fitness clubs positioned. Right now, it's everything from a nightclub and a concert to that of, a vital commerce business, which is what we'd rather be seen as commerce than a nightclub. So it's very interesting times, but the country is working very collaboratively together.
Thank you so much, Mo. Over to you, Mike. Tell us a little bit about the landscape over there in the US at the moment.
Yeah, so the US is kind of, I guess, like Ross said about Asia, where it's the landscape's very different. Here in Arizona, not a lot of cases, got about 8,000 cases and not a lot of new cases rising up on a daily basis. So there's not a lot of fear here. There's just a lot of precautionary, activity. Whereas, a lot of family and friends that I have in New York, New Jersey, very different story. You hear a lot of stories of people that are waiting outside of hospitals to hand their, the nurses' cards to pass over to their relatives that are in there alone. So it's very different. Everyone's experience is different. As far as studios open, good friends of mine and studio owners like Rick Mayo over in Georgia has already been open for about a week since the 24th of April. They've been able to be open now. And obviously opening up in sections, right? So they're not in full capacity, about half capacity. Here in Arizona, the plan is May 15th. And I think those are pretty much the earliest dates that you see, but commonly you're hearing stuff more like the end of May, even out as far as the end of June. But a lot of people are predicting that places like New York may even go all the way through summer.
Yeah, we're hearing similar things. And John, how about in the UK? How are things looking over there?
Well, thanks, Chantal. Over here, in the last week, we've had 25,000 new cases, up to 190,000 cases in total, 28,734 deaths. We've also got over 1 million people who are on a 12-week lockdown, but the rest of us are entering week 6 now. I think we're about a week behind the rest of the world in terms of our lockdown. So the other big number we've got is we're up to about 10 million online health and fitness experts now. But that said, you are still allowed to leave the house for 1 hour a day for your exercise purposes. And there's a lot of talk at the moment about phasing the release from lockdown. So there's quite a few countries that have announced the stages out of lockdown and have started that process over here. Spain, Italy, France still talking about it as well. Our government's announced that they'll be making an announcement next Sunday about it. And there's a lot of rumours around where gyms will sit on that in terms of which phase of the lockdown, leaving the lockdown they'll be at. And at the moment, the rumours are it's not going to be very high in those phases of lockdown. Anything from phase 3 to phase 5 could be at least 2 or 3 months before we're seeing gyms included in being released from lockdown.
Thanks, John. And JT, we've obviously had quite a lot going on in Australia over the last 7 days. Do you want to give us an update on what's happening locally?
Yeah, I can sum it up in one word: lockdown. We are still all in lockdown. Gyms are still closed. We have one state that will open next week, and that is one of our smallest states that hasn't had any cases for a couple of weeks. We have a couple of other states with no cases, so they're hoping to open, but in all reality, we're all guessing. We have no idea. Perhaps the most frustrating thing for the Australian fitness industry is probably similar to everywhere around the world. We've been lumped in with pubs, clubs, nightclubs. Although, Mo, I would question you on what you said. I have not participated, but I have stood at the back of many of your group fitness events at a conference, and they are like a nightclub. So there's fun, and I'm like I'm in a nightclub because I'm not doing it. I'm just watching everybody do it. So there's a lot of similarities, but I think you're right. That's exactly where it ends. We are part of the economic solution, but I also think, and I think everyone around the world should be excited by the fact that every government is including exercise as part of something out of lockdown that we can do. And it gives our industry so much hope that we can position ourselves later around the benefits of exercise for mental health, for immunity, instead of just purely focusing on having buffed bodies.
Thanks, JT. So, guys, we're going to move into, I guess, the bulk of the conversation today, which is really diving into each of your areas of expertise and sharing some tips with all of the viewers on what they can be working on post-COVID-19. Now, no doubt there might be some areas that you want to add into, just give me a little wave if there is something that you want to comment on that someone else has talked about. Mo, we're going to start off with you, and then Mike, I'll move on to you. So Mo, two things. First of all, do you want to share with us your top tip to start off with on what people can be doing around their team and the people in their business for post-COVID-19, and maybe even give us a bit of a picture of what post-COVID-19 actually means to you? I mean, this tip that you're sharing, should we be taking action right now? Is it the second that the government lifts the restrictions? Give us a bit of a view on that as well. So Mo, over to you.
Thank you. It's like you read my mind. The word I'm going to use is communication. And this is something that we need to do now in order to be so prepared when we do reopen, communicating to our associates. And those included would be those that we've had to put on temporary work stoppage so that we can continue to create community and confidence and competency. So what I mean by that is communicating a very thorough plan for reopening so that staff are prepared, members are prepared, and there is that confidence between those two groups that we know how to take care of each other. And of course, communication, it starts there. And from what I've heard from all best practices, you cannot over communicate anything. It's communicate and keep connection between your members, even if you're closed, even if you're not working. And I've seen that for myself, how keeping the community together, touching base, sharing insights, telling them honestly what the state of the situation is, and it's shown to be very helpful.
Absolutely, Mo. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you brought that up. I was actually having a conversation yesterday with an operator out of Asia, and one of the things he said in regards to communication was, don't just communicate to your direct reports, communicate to all of the layers of people that you work with so that there's a complete chain. And here in Australia, one of the clubs I work with, I've been so impressed because the CEO of the company, who wouldn't normally communicate with the group fitness instructors on a day-to-day basis, is SMSing and texting us directly and communicating. And I think that communication piece is absolutely instrumental. Thank you for that, Mo. Mike, I'm going to come to you, and then John after you next. So Mike, your area of expertise is marketing. Tell us, what should we be working on post-COVID-19? And again, what does post-COVID-19 mean to you?
There you go. I think it's going to be different depending on where you're at. Like same thing, New York. I think post-COVID-19, I think even if after the governor says we're good to go ahead and reopen gyms, I think there's going to be a lot more hesitation from the consumer than there would be here in Arizona. I think a lot of people in Arizona are going to be dying to get in because right now we're not seeing a lot of cases and we're just kind of waiting to go, right? Whereas in New York, there'll probably be 2, 3, 4 months, maybe even longer before people feel fully confident in going in on their own, even if they're allowed. So I think knowing your territory, which comes with marketing in general, right? Like just really understanding your area, your demographic, and what people are wanting, what they're saying out there. And then you're also going to want to, and same thing, marketing is marketing regardless of the landscape. You just got to understand the landscape. And so normally you want to find what your competitive advantage is. What are the things that your market wants that maybe the competition isn't doing? So in a non-pandemic, if let's say the 4 or 5 studios around you seem to all be closed on Sundays or don't have childcare over the weekends or at all, those are things that you really want to emphasize in your ads, right? Because you have that competitive advantage, especially when you're, targeting people by, let's say Google AdWords, when somebody's searching for Orange Theory Fitness, for instance, and they don't have childcare. So now your ad can say, childcare, right? And you can highlight that in your ad, even though you're not an Orange Theory Fitness. But now where the landscape is very different. So now a talk of like, we're back. Because what you're going to hear is a lot of studio owners, because of either them or their employees, they're not going to open right away because either they don't feel confident or their employees, they can't get their employees to feel confident to come back to work so soon. So I think leading with, if you and your team are fully on board and you're ready to rock and roll, starting with a we're back campaign, back in business campaign, right? Something like that. I think that's good. Like right now we have campaigns like, are you all in? Because we know you can't go out, right? So something like that. So you just got to understand what the landscape is. And if you have your competition opening up all around you, if everyone's opening up, still open up, but maybe highlight more of your virtual campaign. Our virtual camp, we got 1,000+ studios that have gone virtual over the last 6 weeks through the programs and the course we put out. And we literally, I would say at least 30% of the studios we're working with are actually in a financially better situation than they were before the pandemic. Many are even reporting their retention rates are better than before the pandemic. And if you need any to interview Chantal, make some good content, I can give you a handful of them immediately, but they're great. But I think people, you have to realize there's always opportunity wherever they're at. And so for right now, your local area has been hit, like New York should really focus still on virtual and the amazing things that you could do from home. And the big thing I've heard from a lot of people is our members can't wait to get in the gym. They don't want to work out from home. It's just a Band-Aid. Well, the reason people think that, true marketers do not project. True marketers want data. And true marketers understand full demographic. They never just generalize an idea based on their own customer base. So for example, Maureen's got an awesome studio, it sounds like, right? And so you've got a bunch of members, but here's the thing, she may go, which is logical, man, my people can't wait to get in the gym. This virtual stuff, nobody wants it. Well, maybe nobody that you've built your theory around wants it because they've been the people you've seen. But what about the people that never walked into your studio? Because the average studio has maybe 300 to 500 members, right? At a boutique studio in an area that has 60,000 and 90,000 people that fit the demographic in a 5-mile radius. So what about the other 59,700 you've never met? Are we certain there's not at least 300 people there that want virtual? And by the way, you're not confined to that 5-mile radius when it comes to virtual. So we have one member that's added over 150 virtual members at $99 a month. Before that, going into pandemic over the last year, she had 250 members at $159 a month. So you can see their opportunity is there. We just have to be really, really good at marketing. I think the reason some did so well during the pandemic in marketing is because the competitive advantage was every other studio thought it was a Band-Aid, so they didn't market their virtual option.
Yeah.
So you just have to know, what are people promoting? What are people doing? And then when everyone zigs, I zag. What's the zag?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike. John, I'm going to come to you, then JT, then Ross. Over to you, John.
Okay, thanks a lot. I mean, for me, my number one action is to make sure you know who your superheroes are and make sure that you're allowing your superheroes to use their superpowers for good. I understand the definition of superpower is to something that can be used for bad or evil as well as good. So not all superheroes, not all of our superheroes are going to use those powers for good. So I'm saying look after your heroes, both staff and member-wise, okay? And one of the huge positives I've taken from this already is that we should all now know exactly who our top players are in terms of like your A team from your staff. I remember when I was on the board of Exercise for Less, we'd often have a joke in the board meetings if something wasn't going quite right. We'd few people who were very clear on their values and acting out and therefore clear on their tactics would be saying, don't worry, everything will be fine. And a few other people would begin to panic and kind of want to change direction, want to change their tactics, okay? And we used to jokingly say, wow, I wouldn't like to be next to you in a crisis. And boy, we know now that if people are clear on what their values are and their tactics are, then these are the people you want next to you in the crisis, okay? So look after your heroes. And from your member base, if you're not sure who your heroes are from your membership base, it's not too late to find out. It's very easy. These are the people who come in more often. They give you good reviews. They give you referrals. They've probably been as likely to phone you during all this and ask if you're okay as you've been likely to phone them and ask if they're okay, okay? And these are going to be the members that are going to be most likely to support you when you're reopening, however far away that is, okay? And these are the people who are going to give you nice feedback on how you're planning to reopen, okay? So what we're suggesting right now for our key clients is that you're mapping out the user journeys for your hero staff, and you're also mapping out your journeys for your members, okay? So this is what's going to reflect your core values as a business, these journeys that you're mapping out for them. So again, I'd say my number one action is to make sure you know who your superheroes are and make sure you're allowing them to use their superpowers for good.
Thank you so much, John. And I should have mentioned up front, John's area of expertise is member experience and retention, which was very obvious by that answer. So JT, over to you. Your expertise is leadership. So do you want to talk to us about, first of all, what post-COVID-19 means to you from a time frame perspective, and then your number one leadership tip for all of our operators out there?
Yeah, I think for me, post-COVID is when people tell us we can open. So the day that we open, that now makes us post-COVID, which I'm going to term the COVID DOMS, hashtag COVID DOMS, because every business will suffer a lag once the doors are open. And I'm sure the economists will call it COVID lag, but in our industry, we should call it COVID DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. Okay. But my tip, and going from, I love John's idea of superheroes, I'm going to follow that with a metaphor. And for me, I think the metaphor is around our team, and that is our ship has been sunk. It's been torpedoed. It's going down. All of our staff have jumped off and they're in life rafts. They're all safe. All our associates, all our team members are safe, which is a relief. Problem is they're in the life raft and they are at the moment in many businesses just drifting aimlessly. They've got no real direction. So I think as leaders, we need to be sitting down with our team members, whether it has to be remotely like this, and we need to make sure that, first of all, they're mentally okay, because they're going to be on a roller coaster of emotions as well. And so we need to show that we care about them by making sure they're mentally okay. And then we need to help them have some small wins. So I would love every team member in every business around the world, that whether they're on furlough or whether they're stood down or whether they're still employed, is at the end of on a Friday afternoon to look back on the week and say, hey, I had a win this week. Albeit a small win, there was a win. So I think clear direction from our leaders on what our team can be doing each week would be really advantageous to give that life raft some sort of direction. And around those small wins, everybody on the planet set goals at the beginning of January and have been thrown a complete curveball by mid-March. So therefore, most people, both members, but primarily in this case, we're talking about team members, their goals have been thrown out the window. So what a great opportunity for a team member to have a Zoom call with the CEO or the department manager and say, okay, let's reset your personal goals, your professional goals, and your health and fitness goals. Let's not fucking forget health and fitness for a moment. Let's focus on those goals and what do you want to achieve over the next 3 months, bearing in mind we may not be open.
Thank you so much. You need to put a penny in the swear jar, JT. Thank you very much. Ross, over to you. So your focus is on business broadly. Do you want to just give us your perspective on things and your number one tip?
Yeah, thanks, Chantal. My number one concern or tip at the moment would be long-term strategy on digital. And it comes back, I suppose, to points that have been already mentioned before. You know, companies are pivoting quite quickly into digital space. But to what end is the question I think operators should really ask themselves. You know, a lot of them, it's not commercial. A lot of them, it's a lead generation strategy or a market brand visibility strategy. Now, throughout COVID, that strategy works. Post-COVID, especially for small operators, that's maybe not a sustainable plan. How much capital are you investing? How much resource are you putting behind it? How does it fit in with your brand? I mean, that's a big question that operators have to ask. And possibly what operators aren't thinking about is, how does it actually fit in with your exit strategy? You know, is digital really part of your future P&L? Now, when it is part of your P&L, I think you've got to really put down a roadmap and say what kind of content you're going to curate, and also what kind of format and presentation you have to be on in order to not only look the brand, but also get the prospects in the pipeline going forward. Get off Instagram TV, get off Facebook TV, and go on to white label products that can actually capture that data for you. If you're wanting to try and differentiate yourself as well in the future, you have to start looking at real ways to do that. Is that content collaboration through doing mashup classes with other big studios? Is it having celeb-based classes? But you have to stand out in the future. And if you I'm sorry, there is a wave of competition and capital that's going to chase after this revenue stream that you think is quite easy in the short term. In the long term, it's going to be very difficult to maintain this. So in summary, what I would maybe say is digital is key for a lot of people, but you really have to draw out a roadmap for the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, and don't invest heavily on this if you've not stress tested and built out a roadmap successfully.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you for your first round of answers to those questions. So now we have covered off our number 1 tip. We're going to move on to number 2, and Mike, I'm going to start this one with you. So keeping within your same categories, but I'm going to put all of you on a strict 2-minute time limit. I'm going to tighten up the clock a little bit on this one so that we can get through all of the tips. So tip number 2, Mike, over to you for marketing.
So just tip marketing, definitely understand the different platforms that are available to you right now. YouTube right now is absolutely incredible. There's a lot of available space in there. So with Facebook and Instagram, we've seen a lot higher cost per clicks, and they're rising again, even though they dropped once COVID kicked in, they're rising back up to normal numbers. The reason is because it falls into the same category as a lot of other ad platforms where it's on a bidding system. And so as more advertisers jump on, cost per impression goes up, cost per click, all that, because supply and demand. YouTube, more than 70% of the ad space on YouTube remains unsold. So you're getting impressions at a ridiculously low cost. But the more important thing is you can target people on YouTube in a way you cannot target on Facebook, especially after the last year, so many restrictions, really 2 years. Since that time, Mark Wahlberg's gone to court and a lot of that stuff, a lot of the things that you can target people by have been removed. On YouTube, however, you can search for people that have been searching for things like right now, workout from home, or when will gyms open back up, you can search for things. You can even use 3-layer styles of or three different layers of filters to get really even more granular, but still very broad. And then anybody that is able to click on that to go to your landing page, you can now place retargeting pixels on all there. And now you know that this is the group that you actually want to run ads to, which is a better targeting group than you would have gotten on Facebook or Instagram with their limited filters now. And now you run ads to that group on Facebook, on Instagram, on Google Display, all those other areas. So finding out where you can get the most right person, collect their info, and then market them everywhere else on all the other areas that you can get low cost as well.
Fantastic tip, Mike. And it's so good to hear about how granular you can actually get in targeting through YouTube and doing that retargeting through Facebook. Thank you. John, over to you next, and then JT after that. You're on mute.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'd just stress right now that it's super vital that you're getting a constant flow of feedback from both your staff and your members. And not only that you're getting that, but you're taking action based upon it. Okay. Don't just pat yourself on the back for getting the feedback. I don't think there's going to be a time where return on experience is going to be so highly inspected or expected from your staff and your members. And, you know, I've always believed that innovations come from people and the members. People get a bit hung up on the technology side of stuff. And if you're getting the ideas of what your staff and what your members want, then you're going to be able to evolve and change and make sure you're delivering the things that your members want. Okay, so if you've been doing a lot of customer feedback already, you're like me, will have some clues as to what people want, what's going to impact their member loyalty. You know, the barriers, and these are things that dissatisfy members if they perform badly. You know, the key things before all this happened, this is based on millions of member comments, key things members talked about were locker room, showers, lack of issue resolution, airflow and payments. Okay, the top delighters, these are like the wow factors that are not expected by members, but they improve loyalty if they're delivered. There's things like space, helpful staff, friendly atmosphere, unexpected giveaways. These are things that are still going to be very important as delighters and barriers in improving member loyalty. But by gauging your member feedback after this and during the reopening, you're going to know what's important to members. And again, early feedback coming through. Members, things that are important to members, cleanliness, super cleanliness, but also the conduct of how your staff and how other members are going to be expected to conduct themselves in the clubs. These are things that people are going to be finding very, very important. So again, make sure you're getting a constant flow of feedback, and make sure you've got channels in place for feedback from your members and your staff. Don't just look at it and pat yourself on the back. Be ready to take action on it.
Absolutely, John. And I think if cleanliness was up the top of the list before, then it's going to be even higher up the list after this. So JT, over to you, your second tip around leadership.
I love following John because he gives me a great lead in. And I think the real thing for me is something that we could be doing right now as leaders, and that's ensuring all of our team will be delivering the identical message to our members. We cannot have any rogue team members. So what we can be doing right now is coming up with all of the questions that members may ask. I love the idea of every team member having a little post-it note and being able to write the question on a post-it note, take it off, stick it on a wall, or whether that be virtual or for real, and then working out as a team what those answers are. We talk about culture, but this is granular of culture. And the key thing I believe is that for the success of every business is every team member is delivering exactly the same answer to all of the members when those questions come up. If we don't have that, then we've got this erosion of the new rules and regulations in our club. And really, for me, there's only one person in an organisation that controls that message and that consistency, and that's the leader. The leader has to take control here and ensure all team members are on exactly the same page. And if they're not, then maybe they're not the right team member to be when we reopen.
Really great suggestion, JT. Thank you for that. So Ross, over to you, and then Mo.
Thanks. My advice would basically be towards small to mid-sized enterprises and perhaps some boutiques that are not franchise related. You're going to see attrition across this whole sector, and consolidation is inevitable. The question is, how do you play consolidation into your favor? And so I think what a lot of owners have at the moment is fear of losing their company. And perhaps I think the mindset they have to change a little bit is fear of losing some of the equity of their company. And so going forward, I think a solution to the problem would actually be finding complementary partners and looking to grow with those in the years to come. You're going to be cash constrained. You're going to be constrained on earnings. You're going to be constrained on marketing budgets. Why doesn't company 1 and 2 merge together and start to share more than just a location? It can share resource, it can share material resource, it can share facilities, it can share marketing budget, it can share even CRM systems. And you start to bring out brand alliances. I mean, core brand alliances. We're not talking a partnership or a collaboration, but an alliance of brands who's trying to grow together beyond COVID-19. Now, that's how operators can work in consolidation for their favor, but you have to be willing to have those conversations, exploratory, vulnerable conversations with other operators, and try and figure out if your exit strategy is actually one of growth strategy going forward, but with somebody else.
Really interesting perspective, Ross. Thank you so much for that piece of advice. Mo, over to you. So we're back to people again. Your second tip in this area, please. You're on mute.
There we go. Thank you. My second tip kind of is a collaboration of the thoughts and the messaging I've already heard. So what comes to mind is it's going to be important as a leader to engage your people, because a team will be required to move your business forward and to sustain the necessary changes that will be inevitable, the new normal. So I hear about mapping out the member journey, and I would suggest that to help bring your team along and have all your people engaged, your frontline leaders engaged in that new member journey, because it will have changed somewhat, is to invest in not only, Justin, you said it so well, is revisit their goals that they originally set, but now with what they've experienced, they may have a totally different perspective on who they choose to become in this new normal. And it may be different than what they first entered the fitness industry for, or your place of business. So I would collaboratively map out the new member journey and invest in the training that's required for all your leaders so that you can deliver your brand and your daily operations in a very collaborative, consistent way, because that is what will be required to build the confidence of your members.
You know, it's interesting just listening to each of you speak, and what I'm now envisaging is the importance of us re-looking and reviewing the way that our business operates, to Ross's point, and how we move forward as a business, the way that our staff operate, and as you were talking about, Mo and JT, the staff member journey and the life cycle of the staff member, and then, you know, how our life cycle looks like for our members themselves. So really taking this time to review all three of those areas, because things may not necessarily be in the future what they have been in the past. Now, because everyone has been so good at keeping on time, we are going to get to our third tip, which is awesome. So we're going to do 2 minutes around once again for our third tip on each of our specialty areas. And this time around, John, I'm going to start off with you then, JT. So John, our third tip in regards to member experience retention.
Thanks, Chantal. One of the things I've always said about the key to better member connections is being able to create what I would call really valuable touch points outside the four walls of your clubs. And I think, as Ross was alluding to, now more than ever, you're going to need that offer outside the walls of your clubs. And it's likely that in the long run, it's not going to be the same as the online offer you've built in the last month or so. Okay. And big topic of conversation before all this impacted the industry, a lot of people having with me, was that activity is quickly becoming kind of like the new form of interactivity. So I was thinking back to the days when I was on the board of Exercise for Less, and I was invited to be an expert on a panel at the European SciBEC. And one of the questions we were asked was, should we be working on a digital strategy as operators? This was going back 6 years. And I thought at the time, you know, Jesus, if you've not got a digital strategy already, you probably should leave the industry. But I've learned to look at things with slightly different perspectives now. But you know, what's going to be so important is you really start to think about defining what you want to deliver outside of the walls of your clubs, and how you're going to position yourselves to be relevant outside the walls of your clubs. So when we built the online offer 6 years ago, Exercise for Less, we were already including recipe sharing challenges, closed social community groups where people discuss different interests, you know, programming classes. And now, you know, we'd be thinking to include mindfulness, maybe looking to steal features from wearables like Whoop and Aura, where they're, you know, building in predictive illness, how likely you're going to get illnesses based off the stats you put in there. But the key thing is, it's all about making your brand a trigger, and also maybe the logbook for the members' fitness activities, so you're relevant in what they're doing. Okay, and start thinking of yourself as the fitness partner for the members. Okay, I like to kind of sum it up as like, your members bring the motivation, and we help them turn that into commitment. Okay, so I'd say now, wherever digital is on your list of priorities, I would be moving it higher up that list. But also, like Ross was saying, be super clear that it does reflect the values of the business. Okay, so keep pushing activity as the new interactivity between you and your members.
Thank you so much, John. And JT, over to you next. Last tip on leadership.
I think this one will be pretty short for me, honestly. My third tip is, as leaders of our business, we need to face the brutal facts. It is our responsibility as a leader of an organisation to dive into the P&Ls, to dive into our database, to dive into our marketing, and face some real hard facts. Reality is, not every member is going to come back. Reality is, we may not want every team member back. Reality is, we may not be able to run our full group fitness program that we used to run. And therefore, there's going to be some casualties around group fitness instructors or classes or whatever. Our job as a leader is to face the brutal facts and then run defense between those brutal facts and our team. We need to flip that to run then attack between what's happening and our team. So that's a really tough job for us as leaders. And I honestly believe that's really, really hard to do as a leader alone. So I think part of facing the brutal facts is that wherever you can get support from as a leader, you should reach out to people who can support you, whether it's a business consultant, whether it's peer-to-peer coaching, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's your local association. I know, like, for example, Exercise New Zealand has an amazing array of resources to help owners get back on track. Then we need to. There's no problems with asking for help, but we have to face the brutal facts of what our business is going to look like post-COVID.
Thanks, JT. I'm going to Ross, then Mo, then Mike. And Ross, just as Ross is speaking, if everyone can start to also prepare just one final thought or one inspiration that they want to leave with, we'll do a quick whip round after these are done. So Ross, over to you from a business perspective, your third tip.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the old adage of how are you fully commercializing all of your facility and all of your staff every hour of the day. And I think if operators were really honest with themselves, in the past couple of years, they've made 70, 80% of their money through 20 or 30% of their time. So in those dead hours that perhaps you weren't really optimizing in the past, how can you do that now? And I think there's this big worry that group fitness classes will be reduced in terms of size, and they will. But can you run more group fitness classes to make up the shortage? Can you run more personal training? Can you even add personal training into your offerings? Can you add teacher training into your offerings? Can you add on-demand digital production of your videos inside your non-core hours? And then can you get staff that are quiet in those hours to really make up the shortage and helping you produce that content? You've got to look at your every single hour of the day in your facility, and you've got to look at every single member of your staff, and you've got to figure a way to make sure they're contributing more revenue and more value to your business. They'll be happy to do so, but you've got to give them that roadmap to do that.
Excellent advice, Ross. Thank you so much. Mo, over to you.
I would say collaborate with your people. That would be your associates and even your members, depending on the size of your facility or your chain. Run town hall meetings and run mastermind groups or brainstorming evenings. And from those groups, you'll identify your ambassadors, both on your associate side and your member side. And then those ambassadors can help deliver the message that you choose to deliver or you want to deliver as far as your comeback and your reopening message. So use your people, but ask your people for their insights, because we can, minds together can create magnificent outcomes.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Mike, over to you for your third tip around marketing. Oh, you're still on mute.
There you go.
Okay.
So there's so many different types of leads. Every lead has its own level of how far they are down the funnel, right? So a digital lead is pretty far away from being down the funnel. So you can get a 10 to 20% closing rate on your digital leads. You're pretty excited about it. Whereas your referrals, those are hot leads. Those are pretty much, you'd have to mess up not to close that sale, right? Because it came from a member referral. So how do we get more member referrals during this time, especially as more people are excited to come back in? They've been talking about it with people. One of the things that we've done that we've been telling other people to do as well. And this is where a lot of leads, we had a few studios generate over 400 leads in the last 5 weeks with this one strategy. And it's called the Philanthropic Campaign. And so the idea is, if I'm talking to Maureen and everybody in a group setting, but every time I talk to anybody in interaction is, hey, just so you know, we're on a mission to feed 50,000 people over the next 4 weeks. It's very difficult. We can't do it alone. But for every person you bring in to see what we're doing here, just to check it out and then give us feedback on how we're doing and things that we can improve, we'll feed 50 people through Feeding America. Now, the cool thing is it only costs $5 to feed 50 people through Feeding America, $5. So most people are pretty happy with a $10 to $15 cost per lead through digital with a lower closing rate. A $5 cost, not per lead, but $5 cost per show from a member referral. So on top of that, it's philanthropic. So you're going to be donating money anyway. If you're a big enough business, you're probably you have charitable goals anyway. Your team gets behind it. Your members get behind it. And now it's not, hey, come in and do this class with me and we both get a free X. It's, hey, come do this class with me. We actually feed 50 people if you do it. Plus they're going to give you this. So we've had contests around it, and we've generated, on average, the average studio's done about 300 referrals in the last 5 weeks with it, and has signed up, 50 to 80 people. So remember, people talk about there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It is. There's a light inside the tunnel too. You just got to flip it on. You got to find out what that light is. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in here. You just got to look for the opportunities, and there's a lot of them in here.
Absolutely awesome, Mike, and you were getting a little round of applause as you were talking through that one. Thank you so much. So what we're going to do is a quick whip around. So 60 seconds maximum each. One final thought from each of you, something a little bit inspiring or just a little bit of wisdom that you want to leave with all of the viewers here today. JT, you are first cat off the rank. Off you go.
I think as leaders, we need to focus on what we can control. What we cannot control is when are we going to be open? And that drives us crazy as leaders. But we can't control that. So let's not focus on that. What we can control is how we will communicate to our team and to our members what the new normal, God, I hate that, but what the new rules and regulations are going to be when people come and work out. And we can work on what our product will be. I love some of the things that Ross just talked about, exploring different times of day that we could be implementing things. I loved what he talked about with the digital. We can work on what our product will be. We can work on how we will communicate because we can control both of those. But we need to stop wasting time and, more importantly, energy on what we cannot control. So stop our whinging, stop our bitching about when we're going to open, and focus on how we'll communicate when we open and what our product will be.
Thank you, JT. Ross, over to you for a final word.
Yeah, I'm a massive believer in silver linings. And I think our industry has such a bright future that we really can't forget that. I mean, on the consumer front, more people will strive to be healthy or become healthy than ever before. This is just a blip. It's just a blip. In the long term, we're going to have more people access our industry with more capital coming into our industry than ever before. At the end of this tragic rainbow, there is a pot of gold for the operators that can keep going and find a way through it to be here in 2021. The returns will be there. They'll come back to us. So I'm huge marketplace. This is just a blip.
Thank you so much for that message, Ross. So we're going Mo, Mike, then John. So over to you, Mo.
Thank you. Beautifully stated there, Ross. Start with why. Revisit your why. What brought you into this incredible industry to begin with? Because when you know why, the way will appear.
Thank you so much, Mo. Thank you. Beautiful message from you as well. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, so I think sports and business have such great parallels, and I think a lot of people use them in analogies in a lot of ways. But the most recognized athletes as like the GOATs, the greatest of all time, have not just had freakish talent. In some cases, they didn't even have that freakish talent. They just had a really high IQ for the game. They understood the game at a really high level. And I think the same thing goes for business owners. A lot of business owners that we all look up to, like whether it's Richard Branson or Steve Jobs, they all had actually what some people would call disadvantages, whether it was dyslexia or ADHD, but they found a way to leverage it. And when you look at athletes, what they do is they go, okay, everyone's complaining about this ref because this ref's calling the games this way, and it's putting us at a disadvantage. It's messing up our whole play. Everything we planned on, this ref is messing it up. But the best athletes, the highest IQ ones, they don't argue with the refs that way. They learn how the refs call the game, and then they adjust their game to leverage the way that it's being called. Right now, with where the most successful business owners, not just fitness, but in general, are winning, is they're saying, okay, well, this is a pandemic. We can complain. Is it a conspiracy? Is it not? What's going on? Now we got these murder hornets. What's happening? There's all these things, right? But at the end of the day, the ones that are winning are going, like what JT said, hey, look, here's what I can control. But I think even to go a step further on what I can control, well, here's what I can't control. But what I can't control, how can I leverage that? How can I actually make it a better thing? Because of it existing, is there something that can come out of this? And there is opportunities there. We'll go into another time because I know it's just a closing thought, but just understand this. Yes, learn how the highest IQ players are playing the game. You can do the same thing in business. Leverage the way the rules are being called as opposed to ignore them.
Excellent. Lots of consistency in our final messages today. And John, over to you for your final word.
Oh, thank you. I just think that to make progress, you have to learn to be uncomfortable. Sorry, to make progress, you have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think we're getting a lot of practice at that. And I was reflecting today that in 6 weeks of being sat at home, as a result, really, of our industry coming together to share ideas and help each other, I've probably got a bigger network all around the world in more countries than I've ever had before. And I think of all the things that I want to take from this and continue going on, and also that I've got no doubt will continue to go on, that sharing of industry knowledge is something that's going to accelerate the recovery of our industry. And I feel really strongly that as an industry, we've never been more focused on listening, learning, and making progress. And that's really going to accelerate us out of this.
Fantastic, John. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you. And, you know, it's been such an interesting conversation. There's definitely been some common threads across a number of you and what you've actually said. And for me, having a listen to the full view and looking at the full picture, there's three areas that kept coming up for me. One was that reevaluation of where we're at as a business, reevaluating and re-looking at our team, our member journey, our team and our members. The second theme that I heard again and again was this collaboration. So looking at the ways that we work with others, whether it be on a one-to-one basis or, as Ross was talking about, on a much larger scale with collaborating with different businesses. And then I think the other message that I'm hearing is that need for us to be willing to evolve and adapt and change. You know, like Mike and JT were talking about towards the end, and just thinking about how we are reacting as leaders within our business and being willing to evolve and change where we need to. So I want to say a huge thank you to our second group of Mastermind panel for post-COVID-19. It's been really inspiring listening to all of you and hearing your expertise. And on behalf of the Fitness Business Podcast, thank you so much for joining us today. And that concludes today's broadcast. Thank you all.